This is some awesome billionaire bashing, I just want to say. I'm having the best time. F. Scott Fitzgerald famously said, the rich are different. The rich are different for a reason. This is maybe the most obvious thing ever said, because money changes them. And I'm here to tell you that I've seen it from the inside. Because when I was born in 1960, the Walt Disney Company was a great and successful global company. It was great, it was doing well. But we actually weren't that rich. You know, we kind of lived I shared a bedroom with my sister, and we didn't have, big Rolls Royces or staffs or anything like that. We didn't get really, really, really rich until Ronald Reagan became president, and the handcuffs were taken off the market, and the belief system of Milton Friedman had really settled in deeply. That was when we became really rich. And I saw my father narrow. I saw him become a smaller man in front of my eyes. He and my mother were the two closest married people you'd ever meet, and I'm going to tell you something incredibly personal and sad. They were known broadly as people who just never did anything without each other. They were each other's best friends. And by the end of the 2000s, my father up and left for a younger woman a month after their 50th wedding anniversary, and left my mother alone with Alzheimer's that she was starting to have. And it's funny, people had worked for my father for 40 years plus, and they were dumbfounded. They just couldn't even believe what they saw him do. They were like, I never imagined in my wildest dreams that your father was capable of that. It ruins you. It ruins you. And isn't it ironic that the more money that people have, the more power they wield? They're precisely the opposite of the people that should be making decisions. So I was kind of going through a list of the characteristics I've seen develop, because it's not just watching my father hollow out. It was watching Davos Man too, because I've spent some time in Davos and TED and the Clinton Global Initiatives, and so I've been in the rooms with the billionaires, and I do sometimes feel like an entomologist, looking at bugs from a very far distance. And so I've tried to describe them for myself, and it started coming out sounding like the 7 deadly sins. Jealousy. Jealousy. One of the most hallmark characteristics of the billionaire is, but his plane is bigger than mine. But he has more commas than I have. The 4 comma club, they call themselves when nobody's around. Everywhere you look, there's somebody who has more than you do, and that's not acceptable. That is a really, really horrible way to live your life. Gluttony. Gluttony is more, more, more. It leads to addiction, it leads to compulsion, it leads to suffering. And there is a very important connection between addiction as a personal matter and wealth, because I come from a family with 2 alcoholic parents and 3 alcoholic siblings. So I've watched it happen. If you don't know who you are in the world, if you don't know that you're just a mere mortal, there's no way you'll kick your addiction. Ask anybody in the 12-step programs. The first thing they made Betty Ford do when she went to the Naval Hospital was scrub the floor. Because you have to strip away from yourself everything that isn't essential. And you're saying 0 minutes? I'm just getting started. Fear. Fear is a driving factor. The more money my parents got, the more afraid they became of the consequences of interconnecting or interacting with anyone who wasn't already like them, anyone who they didn't already know would be okay. They didn't like getting in taxi cabs. They didn't like getting on airplanes that other people were on. They couldn't handle it, because the more money they had, the more they had to lose, the more they felt people were trying to take for granted and to take from them. Coveting. It's the 7 deadly sins. But the rates of divorce among wealthy people are insane. And just have a look at People magazine, because there's always a lurid story about a wealthy family where the dad left the mom. I just told you one of them. But the other thing that comes from that is suicide. Suicides among wealthy people are incredibly high. they're almost as high as the suicide rate among poor people. There's something also I call anagnosia, which is the willed unknowing of things, the choice not to see, not to know, not to connect. You can tell them a piece of information. I've had this happen with my dad. I called him the Pillsbury Doughboy. I would give him a piece of information, and if it didn't fit his story, it would just boop, pop right back out like the Pillsbury Doughboy's stomach. They can't take the information in. And so that leads to a persistent ignorance and alienation. You don't live on the same planet everybody else lives on. You need a special entrance and a special exit. You need a private airplane and a private bar. You don't want to inhabit anything but the stratosphere with people who are like you. So there's a detachment from reality, and then comes the selfishness. Like, I need to protect what I have at any cost. I see that my political funding is causing near civil war to break out in this country, and I keep doing it because no one's going to tell me what to do, and I'm not going to give up a penny of what I have. Denial of death. My goodness, this is a really bad one. And if you know wealthy men, especially wealthy older men, they never talk about their own death. They do estate planning because it's part of their tax conversations. But when my father was told that he had cancer and he had a 1 in 10 chance, he said, great. And the reason he said that was he was always the 1 in 10 guy all his life. And he was under the impression that, well, if I just get the best doctors, the best hospital, I'm fine, I'm gonna be fine. And as a result, he never really said his goodbyes. I always said he died all alone in a room full of people. And then there is the self-deception, the self-delusion, the telling yourself you're doing God's work, in Lloyd Blankfein's words, or the Benioff thing, telling yourself that what you're doing everybody appreciates and everybody loves. In other words, billionaires are miserable, unhappy people. The billionaire bashing needs to happen. I don't know why we're being so polite. I mean, white fragility is nothing compared to billionaire fragility. It is time for heretics and apostates and rude, snotty people like me to call them out. I mean, I have broken the ultimate rule in the film that I made, which was to personally call out Bob Iger for making himself a billionaire on the backs of his workers. And I'll do it again and again. My patron saint, the person that I love the most in the world whenever I think of it, is a woman named Anna Grimke. Anna Grimke was born to a slave-owning family in South Carolina, perhaps one of the wealthiest slave-owning families. She was given a slave her own age at 3 years old, who was expected to sleep outside of her, so her slave was 3 too. She was expected to sleep outside of her door on the wooden floor outside of her door and attend to any of Anna Grimke's needs in the middle of the night or at any other time. And she grew up like that. And somewhere in her late teens, she said, this is wrong. We never, ever hold those stories of people who had the good sense to say, no, 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 this is not okay. I know everybody else is saying it's okay, but it's not okay with me. And she basically said to her parents, fuck your slaves and fuck your inheritance, I'm leaving. She went north to Boston and she became an abolitionist. I don't think we've ever lived in a moment where it's been more important to be rude, to be mean, to tell the truth, to call out the people close to you that you love. And how many times have I had it said to me, but Bob Iger is a nice man. So the fuck what? I'm sorry, cats are nice. You know, it doesn't get you into heaven to be nice. It gets you to purgatory. Like if you want to go to heaven, you have to make an effort and maybe give something up and maybe notice somebody else's suffering and maybe take that on and see that it has something to do with you. Living in the stratosphere is a great way of saying to yourself, yeah, but I'm up on my cloud and that suffering down there has nothing to do with me. I have never seen the same journalist cover the CEO pay ratio who also covered the labor issue. Why is our business press thinking those things are separated? They're totally connected. $66 million in 1 year, in the same year that he knew people couldn't put food on their tables. Like, how do you sleep at night? Right? So those of us who know and hang out with wealthy people, there's a lot of nodding politely. There's a lot of just letting people say what they say. And I say, well, you know, that's over now. I don't think we need to do that anymore. Because while the society chose to deify the billionaires listened to that and began to deify themselves. And we need to disabuse them of the notion that they have nothing to do with any of the problems out here. We need to turn our attention to the people who are trying to live in this world on not enough food, on not enough sleep, on no health care, on no transportation, on no hope for their children's future. Like, those are the people we need to start caring about, this 3-year-old girl sleeping outside of your door on the hardwood floor. It's time. And so this is our job. As patriotic millionaires, we need to choose to change the people in our class. And part of the way we need to do that is by taking their faces and just pounding them with the truth, right? Because you can't watch those folks in my film and not embrace the truth of what is going on in this country. It needs to change fundamentally, and it won't change until we change these people. We'll do it by law, but we'll do it by norms, we'll do it by attitudes as well. So that's